Welcome to the Trinity Alps Chamber Music Festival's digital concert. This is our 16th digital concert that we have presented. The first one was back in early May, on May 2nd. And boy, everything back then just seemed like such a grand experiment. And I just want to, before we begin, express how grateful I am to all of the musicians who have participated in these and in all of the audience who have come to so many of these concerts to support musicians like me and all of my colleagues. It's been just such a strange and wild and confusing year for everyone. But it's like music is meant to be a human experience that we share. And, here we are finding ways to keep sharing it. And, even though there are all kinds of compromises on both ends, our end and your end, I do feel like we've really accomplished something. So here we are, our 16th digital concert. And I think counting Amy, she will be our 46th musician to be featured on all of these programs. So it's not just a way to keep the music flowing. It's also a way to keep supporting musicians like our guests who are here today. So thank you all again for being a part of this. Today's program is going to start with a performance by me. I'm going to try something on my little Steinway here, which has been my companion over these many months. I've prepared a program for the season, and no, I haven't been practicing my arrangement of Mariah Carey's Christmas tunes. No, I have been preparing a concert of night music in anticipation of the winter solstice, which is just a couple evenings away here, the longest night of the year. And I thought that I could celebrate that by collecting a collection of classical night music from across the ages. And it's something that goes back to, so many composers have taken inspiration from the music of dreams to odes to the moon to the simple music that we call nocturnes. So what I did is I chose a couple of little nocturnes to share with you today. The first piece is actually, well, the first pair of pieces is by the Norwegian composer Edvard Grieg. Grieg was one of those composers. I think he's always going to be best known for his big works like probably his piano concerto, which is just so popular. It's like you're going to hear it at the symphony every year. It's one of those pieces that gets played so regularly. Grieg's style, he lived in the height of the Romantic era, and he was a great pianist himself. But his style always came back to his love of Norwegian folk music and folk melody, and virtually all of his music has this flavor really baked right into it. I'm going to play two pieces that are from Grieg's collection of little piano pieces called lyric pieces. The first one is called a nocturne, so here we are right in the theme of night music. And then the nocturne goes directly into a little dance called a scherzo. In the case of Grieg, when his music gets fast and light and somewhat comedic, like the scherzo, there's always an element to it that reminds me of sort of those old Scandinavian tales of elves and trolls and that kind of mischievous quality. So, like I said, this is a pair of pieces. The first one is rather calm and beautiful. It's a nocturne, a bit of night music, and then perhaps the more malevolent forces of the night, the elves and dwarves and trolls, come out in the scherzo. In the middle of this scherzo by Grieg, there is a little trio section where it moves to the major key and it's this beautiful melody. I've been practicing this piece for a couple of weeks now, and every time I get to that trio, I'm like, oh, that melody is so familiar. Like, how do I know that? I mean, I guess I just know a lot of music. But then I realized that melody was used in the school where I went to grade school. We did a Christmas play every year, and that melody was used to introduce the Christmas play. And when I realized that, I thought, oh my God, it's just perfect for the season in another way. So I hope you enjoy this music of Edvard Grieg.
It's like so Grieg to me.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. It's so grateful to hear your applause. Thank you very much. I have one more piece of music that I would like to share with you that fits the nocturne, the night music theme of today. This next piece is by Frederic Chopin. I think for most of us, especially pianists, you know, when we think about just the word nocturne, usually we associate that with Chopin because he was one of the first to really write sort of a series of pieces that sort of celebrated this atmosphere of night music. Um, I wanted to play for you Chopin's very first nocturne. He would have composed this. He wrote this fairly early in his career. He was in his early 20s. And, you know, think Chopin had moved, he was born in Poland, and he had tremendous musical talent as a pianist. And even as a young man, he was already composing music. And he decided to move to Paris. And in Paris, you know, not long after he moved there, you know, he moved there because he wanted to be in a big musical scene and he wanted to, you know, achieve some success, you know, like many musicians do. They gravitate towards a city, a cultural center of sorts. But Chopin realized pretty early in his life that his personality or his dreams, you know, he didn't really crave the big concert stage. You know, so very early in his career, he wrote a couple of piano concertos, which are big pieces meant to be played with an orchestra, you know, in a big hall. And you know, even though those were very popular, they're still very popular. He ended up gravitating away from that sort of bigger style of music and instead focusing on more intimate kind of compositions, pieces that were meant to be played in small gatherings, in salons, perhaps salon concerts, or even intimate Zoom concerts like this. You know, when you really are sitting close to the piano and you feel like you can sort of, you know, the music is meant for the personal response, not for the response of crowds, I think. And so that, I think, is why his nocturnes are so wonderful at provoking the imagination, because they sort of blend this very intimate kind of salon style that Chopin is good at with this kind of imagery and all of the kind of mystery that comes with the suggestion of music of the night. So some of Chopin's night music is more dance-like and suggests a kind of a ballroom scene. Some of it is more calm and placid and meditative. Some of it has sort of very disturbing moments suggesting nightmares or like the horrors of the terrors of the night. Um, the one that I chose, the very first one in B flat minor, is amazing. It has this just gorgeous sort of melancholy atmosphere that's broken up by a scene in the middle where it moves to the major key. And the way that he moves to the major key, and my left hand ends up playing almost a drone pattern in the bass, where I play the same pattern for almost a page on end. And it's just an amazing example of how Chopin can really cast a spell with his music. So I hope you enjoy this. This is Chopin's first nocturne, Opus 9, in B flat minor. Thank you all. The applause sounds so good today, you know. You never quite know what you're going to get on Zoom, you know, because the way that, you know, it's built for conversation. Sometimes it tries to tamp down the audience applause, but today we're doing well. Well, that is the conclusion of my little segment here. Today's program features two special guests I'm about to introduce, and you know, each of us has sort of taken our own approach to this idea of night music, of a midwinter's night, and of, you know, the kind of carols and songs and everything that goes along with the season. So you know, we're in for, I think, a bit of a treat today. Even though we are using this 11 o'clock in the morning time spot for our concert, you know, which, by the way, this originally was the intent for this concert was originally going to be featuring two wonderful singers in Germany, in Frankfurt, Germany, Sam Levine and his wife Cecilia Hall. Sam and Cecilia, because of their sort of chaotic travel schedule, going from Germany back to the States and back, they asked if they could postpone their program for a month. So they will do their love duets, sort of operatic arias, in January. But so Amy and Britton and I decided we would keep the morning time spot, even though our theme is kind of music of the night. I want to take a moment and just remind everyone that this concert is open to the public, but we encourage and hope that you'll consider making a contribution. Instead of setting a ticket price that's always going to be the same, we keep it open-ended, and we ask that everyone decide what's an appropriate amount for them. We hope this makes it both accessible to more music lovers or people who want to experience classical music, but also we hope that your generosity will help us keep supporting musicians. So if you haven't yet, please go to the website trinityalpscmf.org and make a contribution of any amount. There are instructions. You can do it by mail and send a check if you want to support the good old U.S. Postal Service, or you can do so online. Now, the next part of our program features my friend and colleague, Amy Foote. Amy and I worked together, oh gosh, 10 or 12 years ago when she and I were starting an ensemble together that highlighted new music and worked with composers. And one of our signature pieces was Arnold Schoenberg's great work, Pierrot Lunaire. Amy, of course, was the singer, the reciter for that. And that's some of my absolute favorite memories as a musician. So it's my absolute pleasure to introduce you all to Amy Foote. Hello, Amy.
Hi, thank you for having me. And man, I love Pierrot Lunaire as well. And you will hear something very different from me today. So,
Okay, that's good. I'm sure our audience breathes a sigh of relief for that. Although, you know, someday we will resurrect that piece, I'm sure. It's
and it
so
is
wonderful.
very
You know,
nighttime
Amy,
moon
normally
centric.
audiences, when they come to our programs, they have a little handout that has biographies and stuff. In the absence of that, would you mind just introducing yourself a little bit about your story as a person and as a musician?
As a human, well, I grew up in San Diego and I went to undergrad out near Chicago and then came out here and, of course, met Ian at grad school at the San Francisco Conservatory of Music. Um, I started out singing folk music and sacred music at my dad's church. He's actually a pastor down in San Diego. So I started pretty early accompanying myself on piano and singing solos for my church. So, you know, this show that I'm accompanying myself for the first time in a while. Typically, I'm singing solo soprano works by composers and new music people. And I don't get to perform my folk music very often. So this feels like a little bit of a returning to my roots a little bit, to music that's very dear to me. And of course, you know, being Advent season and Christmas time, this is also a really special time of year for me that has lots of good memories. And over the years, I've brought some new folk Christmas tunes into my repertoire. So those are some of the things that I was excited to share with you all today. And yeah, and I would say that typically I'm performing new music that's exciting and different and sort of stretches the sonic imagination and my vocal capacity. And, wintertime is the time for calm and for peace and rest. So I think that these songs are really soothing, and that's why I wanted to choose them today. And of course, I'm accompanying myself on harmonium, so that's a little bit different. So you won't be hearing any Bartok from me today. You'll be hearing some American folk tunes on harmonium and autoharp.
Wonderful. And Amy is actually borrowing a little harmonium, a parlor organ that has been in my house for many years. And when I told her about it, she immediately perked up, and so I hauled it over and met her outside of her apartment in San Francisco, and gave her a quick tutorial. But it's basically I don't know if we can't really see the harmonium in front of you, but it's a keyboard about this big. It's very small, and the keyboard is connected to a set of bellows underneath. And so Amy will be pumping those bellows with her feet, like with little pedals, and that pushes air through the organ to sort of create the sound. It's just a great little instrument, and I don't have enough opportunities to play it myself, so I'm really happy that you're doing this. Amy, you've told me the 5 songs that you're going to perform, and my plan is to put them into the chat as you play them.
Great.
So anyone who's interested can keep an eye on the chat to know exactly what the songs are. But would you also like to introduce a little bit just about what we're going to hear?
I would. So when Ian brought over the harmonium, I expected okay, I'll be arranging some of these songs, these folk songs that I already know for harmonium. And then I wondered, I wonder if there's actually music written for voice and harmonium. So when I looked online, of course there were, because the harmonium was a really popular instrument in the 1850s in America, although it originated in France and Germany. But when it came over, this was sort of the entry-level home instrument for musicians of that day. I even read that when Louisa May Alcott was writing Little Women, she was imagining Lizzie playing something similar to this, a pumped organ. So one thing that you don't see are, my feet sort of pumping madly away beneath the harmonium to make the bellows push air through the reeds. But when I was researching music for voice and harmonium, I came across this 1850s compilation of folk songs that this man Elias Howe Jr. compiled, and he's actually the cousin to the person who invented the sewing machine. So completely unrelated musically to sewing machines. He compiled all of these folk songs kind of from the New England territory. So the first piece I wanted to play for you is called 10 O'Clock. And it's from that 1850s Elias Howe Jr. Set of American folk songs. So, and this was originally set for harmonium and voice. So you are hearing an 1850s piece of music. All right, so this is called 10 O'Clock. All right, let me get my little feet pumping here. 'Twas 10 o'clock one moonlit night I ever shall remember, and every star shone sparkling bright in gloomy cold December, when at my window tap 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 I heard his gentle meant that we at church should meet at 10 o'clock next morning. And there we met, no more to part, there joined together hand and heart. And since that day in wedlock joined, the window shutter brings to mind. Remember, love, remember.
So sweet.
Bravo.
I think basically anything played on the harmonium becomes a little cuter.
Beautiful, beautiful.
So this next piece I have arranged for harmonium. It wasn't originally written for that. This is another American folk song that I actually found in the Ruth Crawford Seeger folk song collection, American folk song collection for Christmas. So she was a well-known composer and also ethnomusicologist. So it's been so delightful to both learn some of her vocal pieces that are totally amazingly spiritual and deep and, you know, definitely challenging to sing vocally. And then also to see this compilation of hers that has all of these American folk tunes, especially for Christmas time. So this piece is one that I originally learned and recorded a few years ago with a composer friend of mine, John Snyder, who has an annual tradition of recording a song a year with vocalists and instrumentalists. So this one is called The Cherry Tree, and it's one that I've really become to love a lot. So this is called The Cherry Tree. When Joseph was an olden man, had lived for many a year, he courted and wedded the Queen of Heaven, and called her his dear. Then Joseph was a carpenter, and Mary baked and spun and spun. And when 'twas ripe cherry time again, a family was begun. Then Mary in her meekness, then Mary what was mild, so mild, said cherries are the best thing for women bearing child. Then up spake Joseph to Mary, he was a man unkind, unkind. Oh, it's beside your baby that's bothering my mind. Go tell this one and straight away that cherries ain't nothing to me, to me. Oh, he's a man to sire a child, he's a man to climb a tree. Then Mary's son, our Savior, he spake from Mary's heart, her heart. I'll make this tree bow low down, I'll take my mama's part. Then the cherry tree, it bowed low down, it bowed down to the ground, and gentle Mary helped herself to cherries without a sound. Joseph said in terror, I see my wrong is great, is great. Pray come, my gentle Queen of Heaven, the secret do relate. Then said the Virgin Mary, the secret I will share, on Christmas Eve in an ox's stall. The Christ child I will bear.
Oh my.
So next I'd love to play you some tunes on the autoharp. This is an instrument also that I don't get to play very often. At times it can be very quaint, and at other times, for instance, if you're not pressing the exact correct key that presses the felts, that causes the non-chord tones to be dampened, if you just play it open, it sounds rather creepy, as you can hear. But so that's I don't know, it's a fun thing that I like about the autoharp, that it has lots of different sonic capacities. This is another home instrument in America that many people played, and part of the reason they played it was because, you know, as long as you're pressing the button that says A minor, you'll get an A minor chord, and as long as you're pressing C major, you'll get a C major chord. So I like this instrument, especially for folk tunes. So this one actually is not an American folk tune. This is the Coventry Carol, which is an English folk tune for the Advent season. And the text comes from Matthew 2. It's a very sad section of you know, the Christmas story of Jesus' birth. This is the part of the story when Herod demanded that all of the babies, all of the male children under the age of 2 were killed. So I am so sorry to sing such a horrible storied song, but it also feels important to recognize that that happened. So yeah, that's quite an atrocity at that time. This is the Coventry Carol, and I think it's very beautiful. Lully, thou little tiny child, bye bye, lully, 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 thou little tiny child, bye bye, lully, lully. Oh, sisters, too, what may we do for to preserve this day? This poor youngling for whom we do sing, bye bye, lully, lully. Herod the king in his raging charged he hath this day his men of might in his own sight, all children young to slay. Lully, thou little tiny child, bye bye, lully, 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 thou little tiny child, bye bye, lully, lully.
you.
This next one is one that I also actually found in the Ruth Crawford Seeger Christmas song collection, but I had originally heard it sung by Joan Baez, so that's really where I heard this one. This is another one that I recorded with my composer friend. We actually did this one last year, so it has a little bit of the Joan Baez flair, a little bit of his, and I also play this one on autoharp. This one's called The Virgin Mary Had a One Son, although in different folk traditions you'll hear many different titles for this one. Sometimes you hear it as Pretty Little Baby. Virgin Mary had a one son. Oh, glory, hallelujah. Oh, pretty little baby. Glory be to the newborn King. What you gonna call that pretty little baby? Oh, glory, hallelujah. Oh, pretty little baby. Glory be to the newborn King. Some call him Jesus, think I'll call him Savior. Oh, think I'll call him Savior. Oh, think I'll call him Savior. Glory be to the newborn King. Riding from the east there came three wise men. Oh, came three wise men. Oh, came three wise men. Glory be to the newborn King. Said, follow that star and you'll surely find the baby. Oh, surely find the baby. Oh, glory, hallelujah. Glory be to the newborn King. Virgin Mary had one son.
Beautiful.
And Ian, of course, thank you so much for having me here. It's been so much fun to work on this music to present for you all today. I have one more song for you, and I thought I wanted to end on a little bit of a lighter note, but a little bit of a moon note, and also with a little bit of a reminder that, you know, the things we're experiencing now are temporary. And so I thought the last song I should sing is It's Only a Paper Moon. So this is an American song that's closer to the jazz tradition from the 1930s, and words by Billy Rose and E.Y. Harburg, sorry, and music by Harold Arlen. So this is It's Only a Paper Moon. Say it's only a paper moon hanging over a cardboard sea, but it wouldn't be make-believe if you believed in me. You It's an only a canvas sky hanging over a muslin tree. But it wouldn't be make-believe if you believed in me. Without your love, it's a honky-tonk parade. Without your love, it's a melody played in a penny arcade. It's a Barnum and Bailey world, just as phony as it can be. But it wouldn't be make-believe if you believed in me. If you believed in me.
Hey, bravo.
I have to add a little Christmas song. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Amy. Thank you for joining us today. That was just a beautiful set of tunes.
Great.
Thank you so much. Heads up, I accidentally muted you. Sorry about that. But I did want to remind just our audience, if you have questions or comments for Amy, I think the thing to do is maybe to hold them to the end. We have one more short set, and then we can let this become more of a discussion, a kind of a community event. But Amy, that was just a gorgeous set. Thank you for some variety and a little bit of a theme, but some variety nevertheless. And I think the way you accompany yourself on both instruments is just amazing. It's inspiring.
Thank you so much, everyone, and thanks, Ian.
Yeah, of course. Now, thank you again, Amy. Now, moving forward on the last part of our program features my friend and colleague Britt Day. Britt was involved in one of our earlier productions this fall, and he actually is a pianist who lives here in my neighborhood in San Francisco, and he is playing on a similar era Steinway piano to my old one here. And he has prepared a piano sonata, which is a relatively contemporary piece, and I think that it, in a wonderful kind of mysterious way, fits the theme of today's program. So, Britt, thank you for being here. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, I was thinking about themes, and since everyone here is in Ian's mailing list, you may have realized that, what was it, 2 weeks ago, I had originally programmed this and then switched to a piano cello piece. So I felt a little bad as you were talking about the thematic elements of this program just in the beginning of this show. And then the more I thought about it, the nice thing about music without words is you can really ascribe whatever meaning you want to it. And then also just musically, I think there are a lot of night-like elements to this piece which I'm about to play. And so, of course I was listening to and enjoying both of these previous sets, but at the same time my brain was exploding as I started thinking about, what element each different section of the piece would be in terms of a night sky evening setting.
That's great. I completely agree with you. I mean, I've heard this piece now 3 times or 2 or 3 times from you playing it, and I have to say it really provokes the imagination. Britt, if you don't mind, there are probably a few folks in our audience who have not yet met you. Do you mind doing as Amy did and giving your summarized biography as a kind of an introduction?
Yeah, not at all. I'll nutshell it for everyone. Born and raised in the Bay Area, Mill Valley. Went to college at Oberlin in Ohio. Spent 4 years in the cold. Got a great education, but I could not wait to get back to the coast. And then, so in 2011, came back here, studied with Paul Hirsch at the San Francisco Conservatory, which is where I met my good friend Ian. And I've been here ever since, doing a bunch of freelance work of all different types, accompanying, ballet accompanying, and then most recently just practicing a ton. here. And it's my great pleasure to be able to continue to share music with, whoever will listen.
Of course. Well, thank you
Yeah.
for being here. The work that Britt is going to play for us is by the Australian composer Carl Vine. Carl Vine is still writing music, and he wrote this piece in 1990. So it's what, 30 years old now,
30
but it
years
still
old.
feels, very much like modern music. But I should just say, if that little description, modern music, frightens any of you, I don't think you need to be frightened of this piece. I mean, it certainly has an expanded horizon of sort of harmonic sounds that you'll hear. It's not just as simple as major and minor chords, but I think that it is so tied to, this kind of incredible imagination that I think it'll be appealing to anyone. Now, Britt, this piece is in two movements, right? So there's two chapters to the story of this piano sonata. How would you describe each of those movements, and what they're trying to say, and then what does the pair of movements together create as a kind of an entire narrative?
Well, last time I told a story about maybe looking at a painting and then becoming transported to an ancient civilization, and I've thrown all of that out in the past 45 minutes thinking about our night sky theme. And if you'll humor me, I actually want to I hold on a minute. Okay, so anyway, I think it starts at sunset. And you're sitting alone maybe in the forest, and you'll have that the piece develops in such a way where it'll start out rather sparse, and then more and more layers kind of get added into it, and you'll go through all these metric modulations, which is where the note value itself won't change, but the pulse around it will. So maybe think of if you're riding a bike and you switch gears and your feet are moving the same direction, but all of a sudden you're going faster or slower. That continues to happen, and it builds energy and builds energy. But so I kind of liken that to the idea of watching the sun set and looking up at the sky, and the longer you look, the more stars begin to appear. And then I think, you get carried away in the revelry of like the expanse of the universe, which happens to me all the time because we're very lucky to live in a place with, not so much light pollution, at least out here in the outer Richmond. And then very quickly, I think there's kind of a little thematic tie between, because I was thinking, how the heck does this relate to anything we've been doing or anything that you played specifically, Ian? But I think it kind of starts out and then develops into a little bit of a nocturne about 40 seconds into the piece. And I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind playing just the left hand of your Chopin for 10 seconds maybe.
I will do that. I'm intrigued.
And
Chopin.
I'm just throwing all of this at Ian right now.
That's okay. So Britt is asking for the demonstration of the Chopin of my left hand, which kind of anchors the whole piece with the harmony and with the kind of rhythm.
Very nice. So you'll hear almost a slightly exploded version of that in the beginning, and it sounds a little bit like this.
Wow.
What do you think?
That's
Ian?
wonderful.
Right?
I do hear the connection. That's really great. And I understand now a little bit why you made the comparison to some more celestial version of music. I would say if Chopin's is a very human experience, what you're playing there is a little bit more universal.
Indeed, and you'll hear, I'd never thought about that either until I just now was listening to Ian play the Chopin and started making these connections, because up until then I've thought about this piece as something very divorced from romantic music. In fact, there's just an inevitability and an immediacy to the way it unfolds that just feels so far away from the freedom of Chopin. But yeah, I don't know. You know, very
I
interesting
mean,
stuff.
we could probably have this conversation every day for the next 20 years and
And
keep
that's the
coming up
beauty
with
of
new
it.
things. I mean, such is the nature of great music, is
Yeah.
that it's constantly sort of forcing you to think a little bit more deeply about it.
So I'll.
But before you play, I wanted to make sure and touch on the second movement of this
Yes.
sonata, because when I think of hearing you play this, that really stands out as one of the exceptional parts. I mean, it's just amazing what happens. Do you mind describing a little bit of what we can
Um,
expect from the second movement, the finale?
Not at all. It begins. It's a very toccata like movement, which is very virtuosic, very fast, and very quiet for the most part until it opens up. Um, and you'll kind of hear the right hand and left hand are in unison for a lot of the piece, and then it'll kind of break away, and the right hand will do its own sort of thing as the left hand continues on, and then they'll rejoin, and then starts out trying to get somewhere, fails, begins again exactly the same way, breaks through into this kind of moment of revelry until it kind of calms down for a minute and then erupts into absolute chaos. And I think for the starry light analogy that I was thinking about, for the past 30 minutes, is I kind of imagine maybe watching like the Perseids or something like that, sitting up at night and just watching all these little, shooting stars, meteors, and then they just start impacting on the Earth, and
Wow. Well,
that's kind
thank
of
you so much.
that's kind of what
This is
happens. Yeah.
I love discussions like this because it just shows that there's so many ways to approach music. We can be very analytical about it, we can be very personal about it, or we can just be more general and imaginative about it. And so thank you for that. I mean, this is absolutely a strange and wonderful piece of music, and I don't think even with this, I don't think anyone is fully prepared. So I just have to say, I hope everyone enjoys this, including you, Britt. I hope you enjoy this
I am
performance.
mostly prepared.
Great.
Anyway,
Well,
yeah.
here I'm gonna take my spotlight off, and I'm gonna wish you a good performance.
Thank you. Without further ado, Carl Vine Sonata.
Wow. Take a bow. Wow, bravo, bravo. Thank you so much, Britt. That was just incredible. I can just imagine how much time you've spent learning that. I mean, I have to admit to everyone, I found the score for that and I was following along just because, you know, that's the way my brain works. But Britt, I think all of the imagination that you put into your little introduction came to life and a lot more. It went, I think the piece, like I said, went far beyond what any of us could have maybe expected. Thank you so much for that.
It's a pleasure to be able to share it. It has been many, many hours, and it will be many more.
Yeah, we have several wonderful comments. Chills from head to toe, and that's from Joan Martin. And our friend Pat Britton says stunning performance. So yeah, thank you again. Thank you for that. If anyone else has questions or comments or anything they would like to discuss with Britt or with Amy or with me, I think we should take a little bit of time at the end of our program for exactly that. You know, it's one of the little benefits we have of this Zoom format is that we can really treat this kind of like a house concert kind of setting. Before we dive into it, I wanted to remind our audience that you know, here at the end of the year, this is our last concert of the year for the Trinity Alps Chamber Music Festival. And we're sort of doing the end of the year sort of accounting and brainstorming for the future and all of that. And, you know, my job as director is to remind everyone that at the end of the year, if you would like to support this music festival, that you should do that. There are, you know, a lot of people at the end of the year, they think about their charitable giving, not because it's just the season of giving, but, you know, for tax purposes or so on. And if anyone is interested, I'm going to put the website into the chat here. And I would love for you to consider making a contribution to support the festival. It's not just going to go to continuing programs like this. It's also going to go, you know, once we're able to do live programs again, it'll help us start our touring and our residencies for musicians to come out to California and do these West Coast tours. But in the meanwhile, it's going to help us keep doing these digital concerts. Like I said earlier, it's not just important, I think, for all of us to have this experience, but it's important for musicians to be able to perform for people. You know, our careers are based around it. It's you know, it's part our livelihood. So I want to keep supporting musicians like Britt and Amy and the other 40 or so musicians who have done this. But also to expand to help other musicians as well. Also, we are starting a new program to help give grants to musicians to help their adapting to these new musical worlds. So we're going to be offering small grants to musicians so that they can do things like buy new microphones that they might need for streaming. Earlier this week, we supported Amy. She needed some internet upgrade gear, so we offered her a small grant for that. I was just talking earlier with Britt about how his piano has seen so much use that he actually wants to replace the strings, which is a very costly job. So that's another thing that he might be able to apply to the festival for support. So I hope that you'll consider supporting the festival so that we can keep passing it along in this way. My friend Kate Lucchese asks if I have a financial goal or a number in mind. Our goal actually for 2020 would be to raise $100,000, which would support not just the return of our live festival up in the Trinity Alps next summer. Hopefully that'll be able to happen. But it would support regular digital concerts like this, and it would provide a big seed for us to start offering these grants to musicians. Because, you know, who knows how long this is all going to last, and in the meanwhile, to keep careers going, we are all teaching lessons online, teaching classes online, giving performances online, and, you know, having equipment is just a necessary part of that. So, yeah, thank you all for that. That is my moment in the director's chair to offer that pitch. I have put the Trinity Alps CMF.org/donate If you do that, you can make a fully tax-deductible donation. They go through our fiscal sponsors. You have to follow the little instructions on the donate page. They go through our fiscal sponsors, the Trinity Players or Intermusic SF here in the Bay Area. Great. So with that in mind, I want to bring my colleagues back on stage and just see if any of our friends in the audience have questions or comments for Britt about that stupendous piece, or for Amy about her experience, doing not just classical and opera, but also folk music. I'd like to open up the floor. If any of you want to chime in, you are welcome to go ahead.
Hi, Ian, it's Michael Kogan.
Michael Kogan.
How are you?
Wonderful, thank you.
You look great. Thank you for such a tremendous job you do hosting these events and the opportunities you create for everybody. I did find Britt's pace stupendous. And what I wondered while I was listening was, a coveted seat in a theater is where you can see the pianist's hands. And so to be able to see it live is really amazing to see it live. And I'm sorry, I just had another thought. It's so interesting that live is so much better than tape. And I wonder, why is that? It's the same performance. And I attribute it to what I would call the race car watching syndrome. It's the possibility of destruction that seems to make live performances much more powerful for some reason in my mind. Sorry about that.
No, don't be sorry.
It was an amazing performance, and I very much loved it. And thank you, Ian. Thank you, Britt. And thank you all.
Thank you, Michael. I don't think you're off track at all. I mean, hopefully the stakes are not as high for a mere musicians. There's no death-defying adventure involved. But, performing music, I think, is a certain kind of high-wire act. It involves a kind of mental concentration that is a very high level, and kind of a physical act. It's an athletic thing to do music, whether you're a singer or a trumpet player or a pianist. So I don't think you're off the mark, and I think that's a great comment. Britt, do you feel like a high-level athlete when you're playing the Carl Vine Sonata?
I mean, that second movement is scary. I'm not gonna lie. There's just, it's so dense. It's just so incredibly dense. And I think you're absolutely right. Like, we're doing it in one take. All of us are doing it in one take, and this is it. So you're watching it happen. We're creating these structures that exist only in time, and then as soon as it's over, it's gone, right? Ian may or may not be putting these on YouTube, so you can go listen to it there. But it happened, and you guys were all there to see it, and I think that's the thrill of live performance. And it's kind of amazing that it's preserved even through Zoom, that we can still, and a lot of it again is to Ian's fantastic hosting and kind of setting up a dialogue ahead of time, but that we have the thrill of live performance even virtually. Does that make any sense?
Yes, absolutely. And what's even more interesting is we have another comment and question in the chat from Mr. Vestpoint. He says that he enjoys the Carl Vine Sonata and would like to spend more time with it. So thank you. Your performance was very good. And I would also like to have a recording of it. Have you recorded it? If so, is it available for purchase? If not, perhaps you would recommend another recording of it.
The recording I referred to originally is just on YouTube, and it's the first one, and it has the score. It's how I discovered the piece, 5 months ago, which is, one of the amazing things of living in our
but I think Mr. Vestpoint also brings up an interesting idea, which is that, it's like
this 5 months ago.
the live concert is one part of it and an important part. And then, having experience with a piece of music, listening to it repeatedly, it also gives you a different kind and richer experience in a different way.
Oh,
So,
wow.
you know, it's both of these are equally valid, and I just love how we have Michael's comment on the one hand and Guy Vestpoint's comment on the other hand. They really show both of the reasons why I think we're drawn to this music. this
Yeah,
great music.
I guess I would say, Guy, email me and I'll play it for you again this week because I'm trying to.
Yeah, or, you know, actually we did record this program, so we will be putting this concert on the Trinity Alps YouTube channel. So anyone can go back and find this again.
Yeah.
Or if anyone has friends who missed today's program, you can send them the link and they'll get to enjoy it at their pleasure whenever they are comfortable and ready for it.
But yeah, this is a piece I do want to record seriously. You know, it's really worth diving into for everyone. But
Right.
and there's still so much more. I still find more things every time I work on it. There's always something else that I never quite noticed. And the more comfortable you get, the more you can see around you. So it's an ongoing process, for sure.
Well, I had a quick question for our friend Amy here. Amy, you know, those of us who play instruments, we end up getting so wrapped up into the experience of playing that it's hard to imagine doing something else at the same time. So I just wanted to ask you, like, what is it? What kind of process do you have playing an instrument and singing at the same time, and how is it different than just singing?
Well, it's actually interesting because, you know, as I was preparing for this, you know, my voice teacher, who I saw earlier, well, virtually saw this earlier this week, said, you know, Amy, you just have to practice both things separately. You have to practice the singing part and you have to practice your accompaniment part, and just keep them separate for a long time till you can do one of them without thinking, which for me ends up being the singing part. I sing kind of without thinking. But another thing that's a challenge with particularly the harmonium is, you know, of course the voice is in my body. My body is the instrument, so that when I'm sitting at the harmonium typically, or sorry, when I'm just sitting and singing typically, you want your feet firmly planted and you're forming a platform with your lower body so that your upper body can remain free. And see Ian kind of thinking about that now as he's sitting. But at the harmonium, I can't do that because my feet are at an upward angle and pumping away. So I actually can't get that stability that I typically have. So I'm actually curious. I was thinking while you were talking, and actually as we were talking about Britt's performance, like how much fun it is for me to sing classically. And I'm like, I wonder if it's even possible for me to sing classically at this particular instrument, because I have to have my body in a way that I wouldn't typically use when I'm singing classically. And similar with the autoharp, you know, I have to think really carefully about keeping my torso in a certain position and having my throat in a certain position. And that's actually why I enjoy doing folk music, because you can kind of lessen those extremes a little bit. And I have a microphone. I don't need to project over an orchestra right now. It's just little tiny twinkly instruments. So it has been an interesting process, and I definitely I had to meditate twice this morning to make sure my body was calm enough to play two different instruments.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Well, thank you. That's a nice insider's look. We have a few more expressions of gratitude in the chat from Pam Letourneau, from Lindy McCaslin up in Hyam Palm. Lindy and Pat, hi. And from Jane Hicks, thanks to all of us. But I want to make sure, let's see, does anyone else have a question for any of us, or would they like
No,
to-
I just wanted to, hi Ian, it's Louisa. I really enjoyed the folk singing and your great soprano voice, and it was just refreshing. It was just something totally different and unexpected, and so thank you. Thanks for all the hard work.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, who's been able to listen to voice and autoharp or voice and harp? You know, it's,
Wonderful. Thank you,
so-
Louisa.
Ian, I have a comment.
Yes, is that Randall?
Yeah. First of all, the music that you have presented this last year has just been phenomenal. And I want to thank you for that and for all the great musicians. But I want to thank you also personally. You do a wonderful job of bringing this all to life. And you're a wonderful musician and a wonderful communicator. And I think we get so used to it, we take it for granted. So I want to thank you for that deeply. It's happening because of you. So I think I speak for a lot of us. But I'd like to ask next year, what do you see in terms of musical offerings next year? I have one little specific request. Maybe you could let us know how best to put our requests into you. You know, I never get tired of nocturnes. You had mentioned, I think the last concert or concert before that, perhaps, that Chopin was actually influenced by the composer John Field. And maybe you could present a couple of those next year sometime, and when it fits in. But what do you see? What do you see for? What are you imagining in terms of musical offerings for next year?
Thank you for that, Randall. I think the Nocturne program is one that I was actually planning for January. We haven't really announced the schedule yet, but I think one of the first programs will be a Midwinter's Night, and it'll feature, you know, all kinds of night music, from odes to the moon to dreamscapes to nocturnes like that. So stay tuned. As for a more general plan, you know, I have to admit that sometimes when I think about planning ahead, whether it's music or whether it's my life or whatever, I have to admit it's kind of depressing, maybe not depressing, but at least daunting to think about planning ahead, because, you know, the world is so chaotic now that it's hard to just imagine what's going to be happening in 3 weeks, or let alone 3 months or 6 months. So personally, I try to balance that. I want to stay creative. I want to keep dreaming of ideas, but I also want to just try to live in the moment a little bit more, because there's so much about the future that we just have no control over, and I don't want to get too wrapped up into that. Anyway, that's partly a philosophical answer to your very practical question, but I also think, you know, with that in mind, I think there are two plans. One plan is to keep producing concerts like this that can happen quickly and easily, and they can involve people in different locations, and to just keep music happening and to keep musicians feeling like they are valuable and acknowledged, and I really hope that Britt and Amy feel that way. Like, you are absolutely valuable, all of us.
Thank you.
There were 60 people on this call. It's dropped, you know, since we started the discussion. It's dropped.
Well, and I didn't feel valuable or acknowledged at 10:45 this morning, but now.
Exactly. Yeah. So anyway, the short answer is Randall, we keep going with what we can do now. And then we dream for a future when we can do more later. And, you know, it's my hope that we can resume the music festival. You know, the Trinity Alps Festival began as a kind of a residency where musicians would come to California from all over. You know, we'd meet in the Bay Area, and then we would spend a week or 2 weeks in the mountains on a very remote farm and spend our time just as a group, as a kind of as a pod, as it were, a pod of 8 or 12 or 15 musicians, just making music together and getting to know each other better, and really focusing on our craft, and doing it in a situation where, you know, we're free from the sort of busyness of the rest of the world, you know, free from email and traffic and gigs and everything else. We can just focus on the music. And then, so it's meant as not just a way to do concerts. You know, we've done lots of concerts all over California, all over the West Coast, but it's meant as a way to give musicians this really concentrated, valuable artistic experience. And I hope that we can resume that, you know, and that's our plan for the summer of 2021, is to go back to that residency model where we can, you know, be traveling around and offering live concerts and all that. But in the meanwhile, you know, we are going to adapt and make do with what we can. That's
Thank you.
you know, yeah, that's, you know, we can dream as big, we can keep dreaming bigger, but I also want to try to stay present and stay real in the moment, because, you know, planning ahead is just so crazy these days. Let's see, can I turn to anyone else in our audience who wants to chime in? Hello. Well, it seems like we may have come to the end of our hour. I see so many friends have stuck with us throughout this program, and I thank you again. Stay tuned on our website and on our email list for updated programs that will be happening soon. If you haven't yet, please consider making a contribution to support musicians like these. And with that in mind, I would like to invite you all to unmute yourselves once again and give our musicians a round of applause. All right. All right. Take care, everyone. Stay well. Stay healthy.
Happy holidays.